Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible Discoveries, the weekend show. Today, we have a special guest because if you'll remember, last week, Matlock was very under the weather. He was here for our emotional support, but he had almost no voice. He's still out for the count. So today, I invited my dad, totally last minute, to come on the show. So here he is. Hi, Dad.
How are you doing, Corie?
I'm doing fine.
Matlock came into my office and he said, I said, what? He said, what? And you had talked to me earlier, so I knew what he was asking. I said, yeah, I'll do the show. I love the show and I'll do the show. So it's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for being willing to just jump in completely cold, no prior knowledge. You're up for it.
Well, I mean, when you go through the Bible, you deal with things, and I have like 6 minutes to teach.
Yes, on the daily show.
On a daily show. And it's like, you got to confine everything in 6 minutes. And when it's not done in 6 minutes, they just cut you off, So it's nice to be on a show where things are a little more relaxed and you can deal with things you come across. There's a lot that you don't get into because it's too long of a, thing to explain it. But it's good to be here.
Yeah. Now, like, you could just take your time. I'm going to give a recap of the chapters that we were supposed to read this week. And at any point, if you want to jump in, interrupt me. It's the time. It's the time to do it. We can have a nice conversation. And we have questions. I do have questions from Toby, Alyssa, and Linda after we're done our recap. So those are from viewers on YouTube. Okay, so our reading this week from Monday to Sunday was Leviticus chapter 20 to Numbers chapter 9. And then on Sunday, Psalm 20 to 22. So I'm going to be recapping for us today, Leviticus 20 to Numbers 9. So if you manage to read all of that, see if you can remember, even anticipate what I'm going to say for the recap of each chapter. And if you have fallen behind, not to worry. Just follow along. We'll get you caught back up and you can start tomorrow reading where you're supposed to be reading. Okay, Leviticus 20. So this is punishments for the breaking of various laws. So what happens if you do break these laws as a member of ancient Israel? In Leviticus chapter 21, we see various rules for the priests and the high priest. So things like, who could a priest mourn for? Who could they take time off of their very sacred duty to mourn? Who could they become ceremonially unclean for? Who they could and couldn't marry even is all listed in Leviticus chapter 21. Leviticus chapter 22 is all about how the priests were supposed to treat the sacrificial meat that they got as food. Essentially, they needed to treat it with respect as if it was holy. So this chapter outlines who could eat it with the priest. And essentially, it boils down to his direct dependents, meaning his family, his household servants, which were viewed as family, but he was not allowed to share it with guests who were coming to visit or staying with him, or employees, meaning hired workers, so workers who were with him for wages.
In Leviticus chapter 22, verse 10, it's interesting. It says, no one outside the priest family may eat the sacred offerings. Even the guest hired workers and priest home are not allowed to eat them. However, if the priest buys a slave for himself, the slave may eat from the sacred offerings. So this is a reference to slavery. The two things here. Thing one is slavery. The Bible does not endorse slavery. It's talking about the conditions of the time. It's making a comment on how the eating of the food, the sacred offerings, is to be handled. And interestingly enough, the person who is in debt to the priest, or the person who is for whatever reason a slave, actually has rights to eat the offering.
Yeah.
However, the other thing that I want to mention here is notice that even his guests or his hired workers in the priest home are not allowed to eat it for themselves. This is a reference to the sacredness, the holiness of the offerings, and I find it fascinating that that's mentioned here. And so we need to pay attention to that. And also, again, I would simply say the slavery is not endorsed by the Bible, but it's there because it's part of the culture of the Bible.
Yeah, and it's different. The slavery that the Bible talks about is
Yes.
different than the slavery that we think about because of our relatively recent history. We think about like slaveries in North America, slaves in North America. This is not the same thing. So there's legislation throughout the law in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, where we see the slaves that the Israelites are taking on, by and large, are from their own people. So it was a method of keeping the economy going. So if you couldn't support your life, if you were going to starve to death, there wasn't like a governmental aid system like we have here in North America. You were dependent on the charity of others. Or what you could do is you could sell yourself into debt slavery. And so, but what's interesting about all these laws that legislate the practice is that right here, even in Leviticus chapter 22, although it tweaks us, it really tweaks us as modern people living in the West.
Because we're sensitive to it.
We're sensitive to it. Fair enough. It's something definitely to be sensitive to. But I think what's really interesting is here in Leviticus chapter 22, it's showing that that slave, the servant, is supposed to be considered a part of the family. So they're to be treated with respect. They're allowed to eat of the holy offerings. They are a part of the dependency of the priesthood.
Yeah, they're close. They're closer than the others, the outside priest or no one outside. They're close to the outside because the sacred offering is for inside.
Yes.
So this is inside. So it's very interesting.
And within Israel, there was a time that was supposed to be for releasing those who were in your slavery and forgiving their debt, the year of Jubilee. And also slaves could work, indebted slaves could actually work it off. It wasn't like in Victorian times where it was just impossible and you were consistently, or they could choose to stay with the family, and apparently many did. So it's interesting.
That's right. And I think it's important to remember the law is cultural, the law is ceremonial, and the law is moral.
Yeah.
And so there's three aspects to the law. And so this is the cultural and the ceremonial part of the law.
Mm-hmm.
So the culture is very different. Anyway, I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's great. It's dealing with what Israel's already got going on.
Yeah.
And we see that reflected in other parts of the law as well. Okay, Leviticus 22, this is all about the festivals of Israel. So Sabbath, Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, First Fruits, Weeks, Trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles. It's all in there in Leviticus 23.
All right, I got to just say this. I'm sorry. I got to say one more thing.
No, that's good.
The Feast of the Tabernacles, 8 days.
Love it.
8 days. Why 8? All of the other feasts are 7 days. Why 8? I'm not going to answer that question. People are going to have to find out. Why 8?
I love it.
8?
Maybe check out John 6. I'm just saying. Okay. Leviticus chapter 24. There is an overall theme of God's holiness in this chapter. So what's required for the tabernacle lamps is the best olive oil because God is holy. Bread made with the finest of flour because God is holy. We are also given a practical example of, so a real life example of what happens when someone blasphemes God. They are put to death. We're told this person in specific cursed God's name because they were fighting with someone. So this person was a half Egyptian, half Israelite. This makes sense. We're told when they were coming out of Egypt, a lot of other people groups joined themselves to Israel and went out of Egypt with Israel. So we have a half Egyptian, half Israelite fighting with a full Israelite, and the half Egyptian blasphemes God by cursing God's name. Immediately guilty of a crime and put to death. And
it seems to us in our North American society, our world society, modern world society, so extreme. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you understand the culture and you realize this is a major issue, they didn't have ways to copy things except by hand and all of that stuff. So what you said mattered.
Absolutely.
When you said to somebody, I love you, that mattered. It wasn't just, oh, I love you. That was direct, and it was said what you believed. And that's why Jesus Christ, 1400 years later or 1300 years later, he said, listen, when you say it, do it. When you do it, say it. Say what you do and do what you say. So that's very interesting. And that's important to remember.
This was an intentional choice by this man.
Yep.
This man was choosing to not align himself with the God of Israel.
And by doing so, what he said that this God is evil.
Yeah.
Or this God is bad. And God says to the people of Israel, he says, this is not how you handle me. I am not evil. I am holy. And there's a difference between holiness and non-holiness. Very interesting.
Yeah, there was very strict lines here. You're in or you're out.
Yeah.
Choose. You're in or you're out. Okay, Leviticus chapter 25, we're told about Sabbath years. So we know that every seventh day of the week was a Sabbath day, but then we're told every seventh year there was supposed to be a Sabbath year where they would rest their land. That was the idea. We're also told about the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, where we see property that has been bought gets returned to its original owner. So it's more like it's Lent.
I would love to see that today, but nobody would ever.
No, that'd be wild.
I mean, think about that.
Our system's not set up for it, is it?
It is not. It's not set up for that, but it would be fascinating to see it today.
Oh, the only thing, there is an exception. The only thing that was not returned in a year of Jubilee are houses in walled cities. Those were sold permanently. Everything else was not. Yes, also slavery and hired service. Again, in the year of Jubilee, they went free. Okay, Leviticus chapter 26, we've got the rewards for following God for the Israelites would be dependable rain and good harvests, peace from their enemies, and the presence of God within their people. The punishment, on the other hand, for disobedience to the covenant, it starts with enemies invading Israel, and then the punishments get harsher and harsher until finally Israel is scattered among the nations and the land gets a forced jubilee, a forced time of rest from the Israelites. So if they're not careful to follow God, it's the very land that's going to need a rest from them and not the other way around. And the aim here is not just random punishment for the Israelites, but the aim is the Israelites' repentance, because it's said over and over again that if they confess their sins and return to the Lord, that God will be with them and he'll remember the covenant that he has with Abraham.
By the way, just as a matter of interest, the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all the rest of them, they speak to the mountains of Israel. They speak to the places in Israel. So God's prophecy that he says the land will do this, he speaks to the land.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like calling the land as a witness. Because in ancient cultures, they would appeal to the various gods as witnesses to their covenant contracts. And God's like, no, I am God. I'm going to call the very land that you're living on is going to have a record against you if you fill it with idolatry and you do evil practice on it.
There is a mention in Jeremiah, by the way, where when they went into exile, where God says, and the land will celebrate the Jubilee, the sabbatical year will be celebrated. You're going to be 70 years. I'm going to celebrate this.
It's interesting.
And it's fascinating.
Isn't it? It's interesting, this concept of creation being subject to our sin. It happens right away with the first sin of murder, where God says to Cain, the blood of your brother Abel screams to me from the ground. That's interesting. And
that's right. And the other thing is to remember the Levitical cities and the cities of refuge are called out in the book of Numbers. And God says, and I'm going to make them accountable. You just don't kill people. But if they run to the city of refuge, they're accountable. They have to stay in that city until the priest dies or until they're heard.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating because it's almost like we're subject fully to God, but God makes us, I guess, in a sense, the judgment is made, but the penalty of the judgment seems to be in the land. And that is fascinating.
God keeps record one
In
way
fact,
or the
he
other.
does.
One way or the other. And that's both comforting and terrifying.
Yeah, to me, it's terrifying because of where we live. But I mean, this is for the people of Israel. But to me, it's terrifying because I think about how real God is.
Yeah, he will not be mocked. He is just and merciful.
And I can occasionally think of it as glorifying when I see the skies and I see the birds and I see everything and I see that and I praise God. But it's scary. I'm telling you, it's scary.
I agree. Okay, Leviticus 27. This one's not so scary. It's really interesting though. So this is all about vows of dedication. So you could dedicate yourself to the service of God, but it also talks about how you could get out of this early. So you can dedicate yourself to a certain amount of time, but then if you need to get out of it, you can get out of it. So these are redemption laws. You could dedicate yourself to God for his service in the tabernacle. Then if you wanted out, you could redeem yourself with a specified amount of money to recuperate the tabernacle for that lost service. Okay, here's a question that I get a lot, Dad, about this. Because of this, because there's differing amounts of money for different categories of people, like children, male and female, older people, younger people, is the Bible assigning a life value to different age and gender groups here? Is that what this is about? Is God saying this 25-year-old man is inherently more valuable than this 12-year-old child or than this 25-year-old woman, if we want to get really controversial? Does God see us all as equal, or is this proving that there's a different value system?
Well, clearly God sees us as equal because that's important. And this is, again, I believe, a short-term understanding. I struggled with this because when I first read it, I was young and I first read it and I thought, man, God is assigning value to these people.
It comes across that way, doesn't it?
You know, Lord, what's going on? What's happening here? And then, I'll be honest with you, God spoke to me. And through impression and through understanding what was going on. And there are decisions that will be made in culture, in families. There are decisions that can be made by younger people that are not made by older people. Mm-hmm. There are decisions that are not made by kids that are made by older people.
Yes.
There are. And so all of these things and many others are combined in this.
Yes. So you're talking about skill sets, right? So if you were to hire me, you would hire me as a woman of certain age, 39. You would hire me for a different task than you would hire Matlock, my husband, for.
Absolutely.
We have different skill sets and different things that we can accomplish. And that's what's going on here in the text. It's the value for the labor. So you're going to hire a child to do something totally different than you're going to hire a full-grown adult for. You're going to hire a woman for a different kind of labor than you're going to hire a man for. So there were going rates of service. A rate of service that I'm very dedicated to in my life currently, because I have young children, is babysitter's fees.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know what the going rate is for a babysitter hourly, and then depending on what I'm asking he or she to do, because I have 4 small children. So it would be different if I was hiring someone for a different task. If I was hiring someone to come and clean my house, that's a different task than watching my children. So it's worth a different amount of money. And so here we see the same thing. So it's not God saying you're more valuable than you. It's the priests evaluating the going rate of service for the different tasks that would be assigned to different kinds of individuals if they came and dedicated themselves to service in the temple.
Absolutely. And that's really important to hear that, because you're judging it from the standpoint of God's point of view with the Israelites. That's
right.
God's nation. So that's it's not an equality thing at all. skill sets. That's one way to put it, and that's actually correct.
Yeah, it's because the priests were hiring people. The priests would have different categories of people. They would give them different responsibilities within the tabernacle setting.
Absolutely.
That's what they were looking for. They were looking for what roles can you do in the tabernacle setting.
Yeah.
And that's what the people were donating towards. If they dedicated a certain amount of time, say, I'm going to dedicate myself to the temple for 2 months, but I can't actually come to the temple for 2 months as much as I would like. I want to, but I can't. So I'm going to give an amount of money to the tabernacle for them to hire someone to do that job.
This is important for us to hear, because we don't judge that way.
We don't.
And we judge quickly, and it's like the bank. The bank says, okay, well, you're of this race, you're of this, so you will make X amount of money in a year. They have people that make a lot amount, people that make lesser amount, and you will be given your
like
reward.
Statistics. I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
Like insurance companies.
That's exact. Yeah. Absolutely. So they make their decision that way, and so we guide our life based on that. But let's remember that God does not do that.
Right.
Everybody is his servant. Everybody is his child. Everybody's the same. And so God makes his decision on the fact that he loves us, and we're in this life a certain way, but let's remember there's eternal purpose. What is our eternal purpose? And that bigger thinking has to be in the believer. We have to say, okay, Lord, I'm going to read your Bible, but help me to understand my eternal purpose. And that's different.
I agree with you. It's interesting too, because what gets left out of this conversation a lot too is that the values of service, these ones that are even given in Leviticus 27, are relative, because the priest could make it more affordable if someone could not afford the standard redemption price. They could make it more affordable. This is interesting. Okay, we're going to jump into Numbers. We have to do the first 9 chapters of Numbers, so let me just jump into it. In Numbers chapter 1, there is another census that is taken of the men of Israel as they prepare themselves to go into the promised land. The only tribe that is not counted in the census is the Levites, because they're supposed to be totally dedicated to the tabernacle. So the census is of the fighting men aged 20 plus. So the Levites are not counted in this. Numbers chapter 2, this is all about how the camp of Israel was arranged around the tabernacle. There's so much symbolism in that. I wish we had hours to get into it.
Yeah, you'd need a couple of days to adequately discuss it, but you're right.
There's some segments that I have on it. I think there's a few on my YouTube channel. You can just look it up. Corie Bobechko Tabernacle. I'm sure it'll pop up. Okay, Numbers chapter 3. There's a different census now taken of the Levites in chapter 3, and we're told about their internal divisions. So the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the Merarites. These are the 3 sub-clans of the tribe of Levi, and they all did different things for the tabernacle. So in Numbers chapter 4, that's when we get the delineation of these clans. The Kohathites carried all the furniture of the tabernacle. The Gershonites carried the curtains and the ropes and things. The Merarites carried the frames, the posts, the bases, the tent pegs, the tools. Because we have to remember, the tabernacle is still moving around a lot in the wilderness at this point in Israel. Numbers chapter 5, this talks about the overall purity of the camp of Israel that was required. So how to deal with sicknesses like skin diseases, how to deal with sin, which was by confession of that sin and making restitution to one another for the sin, and how to deal with the suspicion of adultery. Not adultery itself, suspicion of adultery. And God makes this process fair. There's a process by which a woman suspected of adultery is actually cleared of that adultery. And it's interesting because when we go back into the ancient world and we look at this historically, often women were divorced or sent away just on the suspicion of adultery, not on actual adultery at all. So this is God's answer to that. No, you got to be fair here. You can't just divorce your wife or send her away for a suspicion. It has to be true. If you're suspicious, bring it to the priests, do this ritual, and if nothing happens, she's good to go.
This could have been good in Joseph's day later on.
Yeah.
The problem is...
yeah, it would have solved a lot, wouldn't it?
Well, the problem is that she may have had affairs with other men, and Joseph was just one who she claimed she had.
Talking Potiphar's wife?
Yeah, exactly. She had affairs with, and it would have gone bad for her anyway. But the point is that this is this is different
than the surrounding cultures.
This is unique.
Yes.
So once again, God deals with the uniqueness of who he is.
Yes.
And I tell you, that's stunning.
Yes.
Because you couldn't just, if you're a husband, you couldn't just get upset and say, well, you're mad at your wife and there's a lot of things going on. And you say, well, you committed adultery on me. And in the ancient culture, that could stick. But with the biblical culture, that couldn't stick. Because she would say, wait a minute. And they would go to the priest, and the priest would say, well, we have this test.
Yes. And okay, so I've heard so many weird things about this test, because what had to happen is you would present yourself before the Lord. If I was accused of adultery, I'd go present myself to the priest before the Lord. And then the priest would take some dirt off the floor of the tabernacle, put it in a cup, and then I would drink it. And I've heard so many things about people saying, well, this is the priest causing the adulterous woman to have a miscarriage. Okay, wait, guys, it's dirt and water. It's dirt.
Not even a lot of dirt.
Like, it's just a little bit of dust, right? So this is symbolic of, like, my husband is causing me to mourn. Like, he's causing me to eat the dust, right? Okay. And if nothing happens, without some sort of spiritual intervention, guess what's going to happen if you drink a little bit of dirty water?
Nothing.
Nothing is going to happen. So it's asking God to judge. This woman is coming before God and saying, God, you judge. Have I done it? Reveal the truth. And then if there's a physical, like if the woman has a physical consequence, that's miraculous because God has intervened and shown her to be guilty.
So the decision is made by God.
It's made by God. So in the natural world, nothing should happen. It's God. If God intervenes in a special way, then she is guilty. She is guilty. So anyway, I think it's really interesting. People make a lot of weird things about Numbers chapter 5. Okay, Numbers chapter 6. This is all about the Nazirite vow.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Rather than dedicating service to the Lord, which we saw in Leviticus chapter 27, this is a special time period in their lives that people, man or woman, could devote to God. It was a time where they would become ceremonially holy or clean, set apart from everybody else by not doing several normal human things. So they would stop doing normal things. What are those things? They wouldn't consume anything fermented. So no wine, no vinegar, no beer, no alcohol, nothing fermented. They wouldn't even eat grapes or raisins. They would refrain from cutting their hair. And if they were a man, they wouldn't cut their beard either. They grew their hair out long for this time period. And they were not allowed to come into contact with a dead body for a certain amount of time.
Very interesting when you think about Samson.
Yeah.
And his killing of the lion and the honeybees and the honey and all.
And it's drinking?
I'm telling you, it's very interesting.
Yeah. He was a very bad Nazarite.
I would say so.
He was an unholy Nazarite.
In fact, he was.
An unholy, Samson. I've never been more disappointed to grow up and learn the truth about a biblical figure. Because when you're a kid, a lot of times, I think it's different now, but when I was growing up, Samson was like a hero.
Yeah.
He was awesome. And he was just deceived.
Yeah.
And then you grow up and you read Judges for yourself.
You realize.
Samson.
And I like to say this and get people stirred up. Let's get people stirred up because we can say this a couple ways. He's one of the few judges who actually committed suicide at the end. Now, everybody freaks out on that, okay? But he did not pray God would heal him from his eyes.
True.
But he prayed that God would take out everybody with him.
Give me one last chance to kill all these enemies.
Take them all out. And 3,000 men probably.
And he ends up dying the death of an enemy of Israel, which is very sad. But he does maintain his very strange relationship with the Lord.
In fact, he
does do his strange faith. It takes all kinds to build the kingdom, you know?
It does.
Takes all kinds. Okay, also in number 6, the priestly blessing. Very cool. Check it out. A lot of churches still give the priestly blessing. Okay, Numbers chapter 7, we see the tribal leaders of Israel bringing gifts to the tabernacle. So specifically 6 covered carts and 12 oxen to pull the 6 carts. So the oxen and the carts were given specifically to the 2 clans of the Levites, the Merarites and the Gershonites. And this was to help move the material and the posts and the tools. But these were specifically not given to the Kohathites because the Kohathites were supposed to move the tabernacle furniture like the altar and the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders using poles and things. This is really interesting to me.
We could spend a whole 5 shows on this.
Because this is going to come up later. It's going to come up later. And the Bible assumes, I struggle with the Bible, and I also love the Bible so much for this, is it assumes that you know it. It assumes that you know it. So like when we get to David moving the Ark of the Covenant, you're supposed to read, and they put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart pulled by oxen, and you're supposed to go, no. Why are you doing that? And then Uzzah reaches out to study the Ark and he dies, and you're like, well, yeah. But a lot of us not knowing this rule, that the Kohathites were supposed to carry it on their shoulder. We're like, hold on, why would God kill Uzzah? That's not fair. And we have a reaction similar to David. David was like, what in the world? I'm just trying to honor your name. Are you kidding me?
I was worshiping God, man.
I was worshiping you, and you're killing people now? We're just trying to honor your name. But it assumes that we know that the Kohathites were supposed to kill. But this is an interesting concept. I think it's really interesting because it's okay for the Levites to utilize common tools of the day, common technology, to take care of certain parts of the tabernacle service. But other parts of the tabernacle service, specifically in the giving of offerings to God, the burning of incense, the presence of God, that burden was placed squarely on the shoulders of mankind. Mm-hmm. That's interesting, isn't it?
Because God's saying something about holiness. And he's saying something about the tabernacle.
And the relationship between humanity and God.
Absolutely.
You can't just offload it to animals. You can't offload it to tech.
And this is fascinating. Okay, I got to say this.
Please do.
But after 2,000 years, we don't have a tabernacle.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We haven't had a tabernacle. So they've existed all this time, the Jews. Wonderful people. They've existed all this time without a tabernacle. And now we get into this part of the time that we're in, that we all exist in now. Uh-huh. And everybody's asking the question, what about the tabernacle? But it's not just the tabernacle. What does that mean to the Jewish priest? Because what they believe is that they have to start the offerings again.
Right. You're going eschatological with this.
I'm going eschatological. I'm not going to go. I'm backing off now. I'm just saying.
I was going conceptually, and you kicked it into high gear and went future tense.
We can pull it back. We can pull it back. But it's fascinating to think about. We won't get into it right now.
We'll rein it in, but it's a conversation for another day, Dad. I'm gonna have to have you back on.
All right.
I have to have you back on to hear that. Okay. To inaugurate the altar of sacrifice, still back in Numbers 7, each leader brought an offering for 12 days because there was 12 leaders. So each of them brought it on a different day. They brought gold and silver dishes filled with grain offerings, incense, animal offerings. It was a big party. Okay, Numbers chapter 8 is the setting up of the lamps in the tabernacle and the inauguration of the Levites for service. So not the priests, this is the other Levite clans. they're inaugurated for serving the tabernacle and carrying it around. And our last chapter, Numbers chapter 9, this is, what do you do if you're ceremonially unclean at the time of the Passover and you're unable to celebrate the Passover? The answer is simple. Celebrate the Passover, just do it a month later. But still do it. Still remember, yearly remember the Exodus from Egypt. Looking forward to Jesus.
Exactly.
The sacrifice of Jesus.
Exactly.
We're also told again, I really wish I could have seen this. We're told again that the cloud that was on the tabernacle that indicated God's presence with Israel looked like a cloud during the day, but it looked like fire at night. And when the cloud stayed on the tabernacle, the people stayed in their camp. And when the cloud moved, the people moved.
This started with the Egypt, with the plagues of Egypt, and God blocked off the Pharaoh who is pursuing Israel with fire. And so this is fascinating. So this happens, and this is all through the wilderness.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
And then it happens again when they build the temple.
Right, when Solomon dedicates the temple.
And
it's
so,
filled with smoke.
What does that mean? There's a whole lot of questions that brings up. So it's interesting.
It is interesting. Okay. We're going to move on to some viewer questions. You're going to like this question. This is from Toby. Hi, Toby. He says this. Hi, guys. Okay, this is a cleanup question from Genesis. Okay? It's a cleanup question, Dad, regarding Genesis. Hi, guys. What do you think of Melchizedek? Was he a real human king or a Christophany? I have heard both views. What say you? Thank you both for the great biblical teaching. Thanks, Toby.
Great question.
Melchizedek.
Jewish tradition suggests that, and I say that because we teach on the Bible, but Jewish tradition is important, but it's not the Bible. But Jewish tradition suggests that that was the son of Noah who lived past the flood. And that's what they suggest, and that he was a priest in the town of Shem, which is Jerusalem. Now that's a very real possibility. Other people suggest that because of what it says in Hebrews and the rest of the Bible, parts of the rest, not the rest of the Bible, parts of the Bible, that, and what Jesus said is that it's him without father and mother and all of that.
Right.
And that's what we know for sure who it is. The Bible doesn't say for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't give us a background story on Melchizedek.
But
Genesis 14.
That's right. And so that's the question, and that's how I would answer it. And I would hesitate to make any definite what I believe. I can tell you what I believe, but that's what I think.
Yeah. So for me, I would err on the side of caution as well. I don't personally think this is a Christophany. I think this was a human. By guy, I mean human. I think this was a human because I don't see an indication in the text of, for example, when we see the angel of the Lord being worshipped and accepting worship. There's no indication here that Melchizedek was accepting worship. He was accepting a tithe. So, yeah, because when you look at Genesis 14, verse 18, it just says this. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abraham, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So, I mean, it's tantalizing, but there's no concrete anything here that would suggest definitively that we should see this as a Christophany. And Melchizedek means like king. I have it.
Priest king. Yeah.
My king is just is one of the renderings of how this, and it is a known name from the cultures that were around the ancient Near East in the time of Abraham and the patriarchs. So it's known from a few different sources that this name was floating around there.
I agree with you, and I like the fact that you stick to the Bible.
Yeah.
Because we're not told.
We're not told.
So don't ask me, ask God. But the truth is that's not important. People worship these things, but we worship Jesus Christ, Lord and King.
Okay, we have a comment from Alyssa Enberg 1794. Okay, hi Alyssa. Alyssa says this. I thought it was so interesting. She goes, one point that people skip over that I'm always impressed by is the miracle of Aaron meeting up with Moses in Exodus 4, like it's no big deal when there are around 60,000 square kilometers between the land of Goshen and Mount Horeb. And there were no cell phones or satellite navigation back then, only God.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is a great point.
It's interesting to think about, isn't it?
And it is. And so the question is, did God speak to Aaron and say to him, go in the desert to meet your brother? Or was this a regular thing he did once a year?
Right.
Or twice a year? Or we don't know.
We don't know. Now, I will say there would have been regularly traveled routes
Absolutely.
to get from Egypt to the land of Midian.
That's still a pretty good journey, though.
It's still a pretty good journey because the miracle is in the timing as well, right?
Yeah.
Where God says, well, go out and meet your brother because he's on his way. He's here. And I think some people might say, well, while Moses definitely wouldn't have told everybody where he was going because he was fleeing for his life, he may have told
his brother,
his birth family, like his brother and sister. He may have. But even still, even with those naysayers, Alyssa, I'm with you. I think this is a miracle, especially given the timing of it all, because God would have known that God would have prompted Aaron to go at a very certain time, knowing in advance that Moses was going to complain to him. And then he could say to Moses, I've already done it. I've already provided. Your brother's on his way. Go meet him.
And that would prove the fact that God has already thought of everything, because Moses' big concern there was that, I can't speak. What if they don't believe you? Who do they say is coming? And all of those are, and then he says, it's like the Lord kind of sighs after he says, I'm not a good speaker. And it's like, I know. I brought your brother. He's going to meet you there. And it's amazing. Because that's stunning.
God takes away all of his excuses, doesn't he?
All of them.
Poor Moses, man.
I know. And I thought about this a lot. And I'm glad that person, whoever that person is. Alyssa, great job. That's a really, really good thought.
One more quick one before we wrap it up, because I know we're over. Linda Sue asks, what does it involve to redeem your firstborn son? Redeeming of the firstborn.
This is really interesting because it starts with the sacrificial idea that comes in Egypt. And God kills the firstborn. And the firstborn in the Passover were redeemed in the Passover. And so in a sense, and I realize everybody was saved from that. It wasn't just the firstborn. But that's the beginning of God suggesting something. Also, the firstborn is important. Jesus Christ was the firstborn of God, human and divine, and he's God. And so the point I'm trying to make is that in the redemption here, God is putting a figure, or I guess you might say, again, he's talking about what they are assigned to do. It's not an equally thing, but he's putting a figure on this is what the redemption is in animals. This is what the redemption is in humans. And that becomes very, very important. So it's fascinating. And I agree. Now, I mean, you can take that today and you can say, well, my firstborn child, and you can go through all that. But I don't know that because of Jesus Christ, after he died and rose again, saved my life and saved our lives and all of that, he's fulfilled the law. And this is the law. So that's very, very interesting. So we don't necessarily do that today, but it is important for us to look back and see it, and we see it. Corie, I think, has it.
Yeah, so like you said, it's mentioned in Exodus 13, the consecration of the firstborn, because it's supposed to remind them that God saved the firstborn of Israel from the destroyer, the plague of the death of the firstborn during the Exodus wandering. So we've got that in Exodus chapter 13. And then in Numbers chapter 18, it talks about the redemption of the firstborn again. I'll read Numbers 18, starting in verse 14. Everything in Israel that is devoted to the Lord is yours. The first offspring of every womb, both human and animal, that is offered to the Lord is yours. But you must redeem every firstborn son and every firstborn male of unclean animals. When they are a month old, you must redeem them at the redemption price set at 5 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs. And then it goes on giving like other animals. So this is specifically in the context of priests and Levites and their inheritance. So this is all tied up in the memory of the Exodus.
Absolutely.
It's all tied up in the memory of the Exodus and how Israel owes its life, not only in the life of its human children, its human firstborn sons, but also the life of its animals.
Yeah.
Because we see in Numbers 18, it's animals as well. And so they would redeem it by paying a price, like giving an offering of money to the tabernacle, so they didn't have to sacrifice it as a sacrifice. So yes, I would say that what's involved in it is offering a sacrifice or paying a redemptive price as a memory. And we see this often in the law, don't we? Where God says, when your children ask you, what is this about? You say, this is because God redeemed us.
Yeah.
God saved us. And so now as a remembrance of that, we do the same thing. We redeem you, but in a different way.
I think, again, just to reiterate this, and I know we're over, I'm sorry, but just to reiterate this, the Shema is important. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. These commands that I give you today are be up in your heart. Teach them diligently to your children.
Yes.
It doesn't say have the youth pastor teach them, have the children's pastor. No. You teach these commandments diligently. Now, God set that in motion to explain to the people of Israel that this was important, and He wants them to remember. He wants them to know. Now, I personally take the Shema seriously, and so, I apply it where I can, and so we try to teach them. And so that becomes very important.
Also, I want to mention that I'm trying to find it here.
And the other thing I would say is that God says and tells us, fathers, do not embitter your children. New Testament now. Fathers, do not embitter your children. Do not create, in other words, do not, the wording, it means actually, do not create anger in your children to reject what you're saying. That becomes important. That's embitterment. And He says, and that doesn't refer to response. It just refers to what you put in their mind. So if you put in their mind, you're always yelling at them and all that they may treat you fine, but in their mind, they have you as a yelling, angry person. And that's not the way that God is with us. And that's not the way that we should be with our children.
Yes.
So that's important.
Yes. So one thing that I forgot to bring up that I want to bring up is in Exodus 13:1, when it says, the Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male, the first offspring of every womb among the Israelite belongs to me, whether human or animal. The reason why in Numbers 18, we just see the animal being dealt with, where there's a redemption price, or you have to sacrifice them, or it's a redemption price. The reason why we don't see the firstborn humans being talked about is because in Numbers 3, verse 12, this is what it says. I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether human or animal. They are to be mine. I am the Lord. So that consecrate to me means for the service of. So animals can be sacrificed. Humans can't be sacrificed.
That's exactly right. And the burden of the Levites was the tabernacle and the people.
Service.
The iniquity, he says, the iniquity of the tabernacle. Wow, that's incredible. So anyway.
So while there are redemption prices and different sacrifices that the Israelites may have offered, this inherently, Numbers 3, where the Levites stand in as a replacement, ultimately answers Exodus 13.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to say?
No. Well, we're like 20 minutes over.
I know. I'm so sorry. It's just so interesting. Who knew that the law it could be so interesting? All right, guys, let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section down below. If you're watching on YouTube, please ask questions for upcoming episodes. If you're listening on a different app, go to our website, BibleDiscoveryTV.com. You can find our contact page there with our emails. You can send your questions that way. All right, guys, until next week, happy reading and studying.